Steve, and this is my rock and metal life. And I'm here doing something a little bit different tonight, something I haven't done before. Thought about doing it a little bit, and here we are. I am joined by my friend Chris, who records and performs, and you may know him as Laguna Munta. He is the guy behind this concept masterpiece here called Chuck, and he's got a whole bunch of other stuff he's done, recording and playing live. And we're just going to kick around some stuff. I think we're going to start with some Judas Priest tonight. But first, tell us what you got going on musically right now, or otherwise. What do you got going on these days?
Well, I'm always working on something. Either I'm rehearsing to play a live show or I'm writing new material. And I tend not to be ultra promotional while I'm working on a project. I tend to try to wait till I have something to actually put out there till I start promoting. Because you see these people who show every stage of a process, and I just don't like to do that because I find it distracting from actual work. Because then I find myself doing things just for the sake of having content, just so I can have something to post on Facebook. So I'm currently working on a new album. It is a follow-up to Chuck, but it's not Chuck 2 per se.
Okay.
It is a continuation of the story. It's going to follow some of the same characters and kind of follow them through a different part of their lives and a different, what is the word I'm looking for? Obstacles.
Okay.
The characters in the first album, they had to reconcile with dealing with Chuck, losing Chuck, whom the characters in the album are Chuck's children, and they had to deal with losing Chuck. And so this album is going to follow those same characters overcoming new obstacles.
Excellent. Hey, I wonder, you're in New Mexico, correct?
Yep.
So what's that scene like there? I mean, what is it? Is it a better or worse place than if you lived out here in California to get your thing going? Or maybe with YouTube, it probably doesn't matter, and the ways you can promote online.
Yeah, that's a good point. The internet just changed the game for everything, but it's probably a mixed bag. I think it's easier in the sense that the pool is smaller. There's not as many people here, so there aren't as many talented people here.
Okay.
Whereas out there in LA, there's just so many people and way more talent. I don't know if you're in LA. I think LA right away. But so many talented people, so there's just going to be a larger pool of talent. So it's going to be harder to be seen in that pool. But the same could be said for the internet. There's so many talented people who have access and could just start uploading their music. To be seen there is also difficult. So the scene here locally is they like a lot of blues bands, and they like a lot of cover bands. So being an original player, that I get gigs because I'm original, and I don't get gigs because I'm original. It just depends on the venue. But I'm fortunate. There's a lot of venue owners and people who really appreciate the fact that I write original things, and they want me because of that. So I've found the scene to be very, very, very good. And the other musicians in town, they're all really nice, and they're personable. There's not a lot of, what do you call it, band rivalry. Like, when I was a teenager, I very much had that band rivalry mentality. Like,
Okay.
it's us against all these other bands. It's
Yeah.
If we're not winning, we're losing. But I just don't feel that way anymore, because I know we all have something different to offer. So I would say it's a nice community of nice people, and there's a good variety of a style here.
So I always wonder, when you play live, every time I see you play live, you're the one-man band, right?
Right.
And I know you do all your own music, everything that we hear, that's all you, correct?
Yeah. If the only thing that sometimes isn't me is maybe the drums. Sometimes I'll just use like a pre-existing drum loop.
Okay.
That fits my song. That's how I kind of started out with the first album, was I just found things that fit, because I just didn't have the tech to create my own drums. Now because I'm not a very good drummer. I started on drums, but I'm not very good at it. So what I'll do is I have an electric drum pad. Okay. It's just like a tabletop and you can program different sounds. You can get a kick, snare, toms, etc. So if I can't nail a drum beat, I'll record a kick just by itself, and I'll set that up, and I'll time it out or loop it how I need to, and then I'll put in the hi-hats and the snares where I want them. So sometimes I have to build a whole drum track piece by piece.
Oh, okay.
And it's really tedious. But if when you can't always afford to pay a drummer, it's you can do it. You can at least make the music happen. So a lot of the stuff on the Chuck album, well, I think actually every song except for one is me creating the drums. It's not a drum loop. So yeah, and then I'll record bass. Sometimes I'll use the actual handheld, the actual instrument, electric bass, or I will program a bass sound on the keyboard and use that to record.
Interesting. So do you want to be in a band? Do you want to perform like with other people and collaborate with other people? Because let me tell you this before you answer.
Right.
I told you I play guitar, and I play guitar and you play guitar, and that's like, I shoot baskets and Steph Curry plays basketball. It's the same thing. I'm that far off. And the reason I've gone all this way like this is one big thing is I never wanted to get in a situation where I was writing music with someone else, or I wrote something and some other guy said, well, that's pretty good, but I think what you should do is this, and it's like I looked at the whole thing as like music is kind of like personal or whatever. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to Judas Priest. I'm going to listen to Led Zeppelin, whatever. And that's my escapism. But me learning to do whatever I do, and I just want that to be me. And I don't want, and so you don't get better because you don't have the influences like right there in the room with you. And, what was that? Oh, did you ever try that? I've done none of that. So here I sit, but I have fun, but that's fine. What about you? What do you think about that? Like collaborating with others?
It's tricky, and when I was a teenager, I had a metal band in high school, and I wrote the tunes, and everybody was comfortable with that. And the benefits of that are exactly what you said. You have other people in the room pushing you, and kind of maybe throwing good ideas out, sometimes bad ideas. And as a teenager, I wasn't equipped to be a band leader. I just didn't have the capacity. It's difficult to be diplomatic when you're a teenager. You just kind of go, well, that sucks. And that's not a diplomatic way to be. And so it's difficult to get along with everybody, especially just because I wasn't really equipped for it. But the perks of it were the spontaneity of it. You have other musicians in the room, and you're playing, and somebody plays something different, or you try something different, and then something great can come of that. Contrast, you show up and your guitar player's in a bad mood, or your drummer's in a bad mood, and that affects the whole practice. He's in a bad mood, so now he pisses off him, and now he's upset, and now guess what? The song is not going to be what it should be.
Yeah.
So working alone for so long, and originally Laguna Munta was a duo, me and my best friend, and we're still good friends, and I'm actually still friends with most of the people who were in my original band. But me and my friend were going to be a duo after the metal band broke up, and the relationship was good. But I just wanted to commit more professionally. I wanted to spend more time. I wanted to play more gigs, and he just wasn't available. He didn't want to commit that much time to it. So that turned into me playing solo, which worked out for me because having been in the metal band so long, the other people in the band kind of wanted me to write metal songs. And as a songwriter, it just wasn't that fulfilling anymore. So when I would write other things, it was kind of tricky to try to integrate that into the band because it's not what we were going for. So that's the good part about being solo, is you can write what you want, express how you want, and you're not limited in that way. And so trying to collaborate after being solo for a while is difficult because you have to schedule times with people, and if they're not available, that's just life, and you have to reschedule, and maybe they're not available again, and you reschedule.
Yeah.
And it turns into this really frustrating thing because I've gotten so used to, I'm going to do this. I go in my room, I start working on it, and if I don't make any progress, it's my fault. Or the universe or whatever, you know.
Sure.
I don't have anybody else to blame. So the tricky part about collaborating with other people is now kind of inviting other people's problems or time constraints or stresses into my creative environment, which has kind of been in this little cocoon for so long.
Yeah.
And so there are benefits, there are perks to both, and there are downsides to both. I'm open to working with other people, and ultimately that would be the goal, to have a nice like 3-piece band, get a bass player, get a drummer. But I haven't actively pursued it. I just figure I'll keep doing my thing, and if I can build a following on my own, maybe I'll be in a position one day where I can just hire the right people.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. It's interesting. I wonder, I got a friend that lives in Tennessee. He's just a badass guitar player, shredder. And he's gone over the last year. He's tried, he's put a lot of effort into putting a band together, and he thinks he's close sometimes, and he gives me like little snippets of stuff that he's come up with, and oh man, we're gonna, and then the band situation for him, it seems like, falls apart from time to time. And I don't have any insight as to why it falls apart. He's just like, next time we talk, he's like, yeah, we've moved on from that. And you guys, like I say, I sit here and nobody in this house even hears me play very often. And if somebody walks by or comes in here, I get all nervous. I don't know how you guys get in front of people and do what you do. But I mean, that's why I just really appreciate good musicianship. And, that, the way you sing too, I wonder, do you really like singing, or is
I love singing.
That's what I thought. It seems like there's a lot of personality in that, and a lot of, you're really telling the story and putting the emphasis and all that.
Oh, well, thank you. My influences were some of the best frontmen, like Rob Halford, huge influence on my persona, not like persona, but my presentation as a frontman. Paul Stanley from Kiss as well, great frontman, just like talks to the people, brings them in, has great energy about him. At a show I played in July, or I think, I played at the Ski Valley here in my hometown, and a guy came up to me and he goes, "I love the way you talk to the crowd like there's a bunch of people there." Because I talk like there's 30,000 people when there's 3.
Yeah.
Like, all right, people, this next one is called this. Just kind of try to amp it up and be a front man, and that's just from these great examples I had growing up. And my dad played music when I was a kid. He was always in his room working on writing and recording.
That's
And
great.
I remember one of my favorite stories about this is in reference to me singing. When I first started to try to sing, I really had no confidence with it, as one does. And my dad was trying to set me up to record a few songs that I had written. And I said, I just don't really think I can sing. And my dad was really funny. He got in my face. He got real intense. He goes, "No, screw that. You can sing." And and I was like, "Oh, I guess I can."
Great.
So he really pushed me to do it. But I still get nervous. Before every show, I'm very nervous. I like to try to get to the venue early, set up early so I don't have to rush. And then I can kind of sit down and breathe and kind of get into the vibe of the place. And then usually 2 or 3 songs in, I start to mellow out. I'm like, "Oh, this doesn't sound like complete garbage. This sounds pretty good. I still remember how to play guitar. That's a good sign." And then I kind of ease into the show and I get comfortable as I go. But it's still very nerve-wracking every time.
Oh, man, I would imagine, so that's good to hear. Not that, I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but I mean, good to hear that everybody, has butterflies and stuff like that.
Well, I think it's a sign that you care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you want it to go well, right? I always went back and forth on, I watched those old Guns N' Roses before they got signed videos, and, some of them are a mess and parts of them are brilliant and stuff like that. And I was always a guy, people would say, "Oh, you go see them, and, the mess ups, and, when it goes off the rails, that's the best part of the show."
Right.
I kind of don't really feel like that. I know a crowd in a live situation goes, "Oh man, this is crazy. What's going on?" I kind of want the song. I kind of want the what I came there for is.
No, I understand that you wanted to sound like it did on the record or whatever. Yeah, and that's really why it's disappointing sometimes when you go see a show and you're like, oh man, this guy is not sounding like he did on the record, and it really takes you out of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned Halford a little bit ago, and the way I even came across your YouTube channel was I read this book, K.K. Downing's Heavy Duty, and this book has caused quite a stir in a number of ways. I think it's the reason he's not in Judas Priest today, because KK just told the story, told the way things went, was honest about it, revealed some things that were maybe uncomfortable for other guys. And, I was very curious. I read it myself. I didn't read a review of anybody wrote online. I just knew the book was out there, and I read it and I dug it, and I went online one night to see, what do other people think? And I found your video, and, we had a lot of common ground there. We had I looked at Glenn Tipton a little different after this. And I honestly, I think KK's, obviously some of it's in his head, and my workplace drama is probably in some ways no different than these guys' workplace drama. So some of it, I'm sure it's true. Some of it maybe should have let it slide. I don't think, I think Halford and Ian Hill probably don't really care, would probably have him back. I think Glenn's holding out, that's my opinion. And I also read this book. Did you happen to read Halford's book?
Confess? I didn't, and I think I'm going to, but I was initially hesitant because I felt like it was just, KK wrote a book, so I'm going to write a book.
Yeah, okay, that's his first book. He's got another one out recently that I have not read, but that one came out not too long after KK's. And, surprisingly to me, Halford went down the road. He's like everybody's friend, and he's sympathetic towards everybody, and he has something good to say about everybody. And he was pretty honest, and he went way into his lifestyle, more information than I wanted to know. And he went way far into it. And that's, the book's called Confess. And as you know, I think he's got like, 1 million pounds off his shoulders.
Right.
He wants to talk about everything. And it is interesting, I mean, when they're on top of the world and everything, and all the other guys after the show, they get together with girls, and, it's free for all, anything goes. And he doesn't really get to do that because he doesn't want to hurt the band's image, because at that time,
he had to kind of hide himself.
So, whatever you think of his lifestyle, he was a really good team player back then. He did what he had to do to, at his own expense, to let the band be successful.
Right.
And then I don't really know his role, because he left Priest first, and he talks about all that, and he left. And then when he came back, he talks about it in this book, like, me and I can't remember which one it was. It was like him and Ian Hill, or him and Glenn, they went to it. They agreed to go to a pub one night, and they sat there and they drank beers. And he said, I think I'll be back. And, we'll be glad to have you. And he acted like it was like, this is just happenstance. We could have done it at any time. And I think, there was more acrimony than he's letting on in here. But again, Rob's trying to smooth everything out. That's what I got from this book. That's one thing I got about it. KK, I don't have a problem with what he did. I don't know how I feel if someone criticizes me in print and we haven't gone over it face to face. I don't know what it's like to be famous. So
right.
There's that whole thing to it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the KK book? What were your big takeaways?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and it's been a long time since I read it. I only read it that one time. And this was before I got in the habit of taking notes, because now whenever I read a book, I have a pencil. I underline things. I write notes in the margins. That's just how I read now. And I wasn't doing it at that time, and I regret that, because even after I read it, there were moments where I was like, oh, there was a really great passage that I totally connected with. Where was that? And I just couldn't find it. But I really enjoyed it, and I liked the way he was sort of honest. He he said, oh, well, there were these problems with me and Glenn, and because of the way I was raised, I didn't really address them or deal with them properly.
Yeah.
And I that's healthy. I'm like, yeah, we all have our I call it our programming. We're all raised a certain way, and then we kind of either have to break free of that and reform ourselves, cast off which no longer serves, and kind of adopt new ways of living. And maybe he just didn't do that in time,
Yeah.
and so he wasn't handling these problems the way he should be. Um, but I enjoyed it, and I think the fact that he was kind of blunt is because he was out of the band, and I
Yeah.
think that it's kind of freeing in a way where he's doesn't have to worry about, well, I don't have to be this KK Judas Priest guy anymore. I can just be a person and tell the truth. I don't have to sugarcoat it because I'm still trying to be friends or in a band with these guys. And I'm wondering if maybe Rob held back because he's still the guy. He's still there front and center. And
Hmm.
maybe maybe later when he retires or something, he'll get more down and dirty about it, the nitty gritty. But maybe he's just an easygoing guy, and maybe he just lets things roll off. But I really enjoyed KK's book, and I'll have to read it again. But I found it very enlightening and enjoyable.
Oh yeah, me too. And same thing. I haven't read it since right when it came out. Um, and again, his points were well made to me. Since then, they replaced him obviously with Richie Faulkner.
Yeah.
I don't care that Richie's blonde and is a lookalike. I couldn't possibly care less about anything like that. I know that thing was thrown out there. When Kate
Totally.
was flailing. Oh, they just got a guy to look like. Richie's a badass guitar player. Okay.
Oh, he rips it up.
Oh man, and he's got the Priest sound. He's. I think that Firepower record was just brilliant. I mean, just.
I didn't listen to Firepower.
Oh really?
Yeah, after I listened to Redeemer of Souls and I was
Yeah.
not sold. I just didn't enjoy it. Maybe it was where I was in my life at the time. I haven't really revisited it. But this is something interesting about Redeemer, and this is in reference to KK's book. I remember KK complaining about Glenn and Rob kind of trying to write ballads
Uh-huh.
because Glenn would want to write them, and of course Rob would want to sing them. What singer wouldn't want to sing a ballad? You get to showcase your voice. He was saying he would have liked to have kept it more metal, right? KK.
Okay.
I thought it interesting that the first album without KK was like the kind of a straight driving rock metal album. Because when I listened to Redeemer of Souls, there's not really a pretty song on that album. And I just thought it was interesting. It's like, he's gone. Now there's not a pretty song on here. And while I was listening to the album, the thought was running through my head for me, oh, a pretty song could save this album for me. Like that's
Okay.
what I was looking for. I was like, oh, well, let's hear what Priest is doing now as far as their maybe acoustic. I like it when they throw in a pretty song, a ballad or whatever here and
Yeah.
there. I like those songs. Like I love Before the Dawn,
Yeah.
The Last Rose of Summer. I really enjoy those songs. And
Okay.
something like that I felt would have been just a nice contrast to the rest of the album and would have maybe elevated it for me.
Yeah, Redeemer of Souls is kind of forgettable to me. And I saw him on that tour, and they started with Dragonaut, which is, I believe it's the first song on Redeemer of Souls. And that's a good song. That's it to me. That's
Yeah,
a
I
song.
remember that one.
Yeah, they can come up with those anytime they want, if you ask me. Come up with a riff and the grand entrance of here comes Halford,
And they love to write about entities. They always create an entity, the invader,
okay,
the painkiller, the
yeah,
Hellion, the
yeah,
Sentinel, So the Dragonaut, it's just another entity in the Priest catalog.
exactly, yeah. But like you said, the rest of the record, it doesn't stick in my mind. I'm telling you, Firepower. If you're like a Screaming for Vengeance British Steel fan, I mean, just brilliant. My personal favorite Priest record of all time is Defenders of the Faith. I just love that one. Yeah, to me, it's aggressive and heavy, and and they got the slow down stuff. They don't really have the the Last Rose of Summer or whatever. They don't have something like that on there. I don't think thinking about it.
Yeah,
now.
and I don't feel like it's always necessary either.
Right. But they, I think they really hit the jackpot with Screaming for Vengeance and British Steel. and radio friendly to some extent,
Right.
and songs that go down really good. Not every metal guy really likes the 6 or 7, or 8 minute long song, but I appreciate those things, and I love the guitar interplay and all that. So
Oh
Defenders
yeah.
is my number one, but this, I'd say Firepower fits in with that other, I want to say era, but Point of Entry was in between. So, and that's quite different to me from the British Steel and
It is. Yeah.
Screaming. And that was another thing I was going to mention on the books. A lot of both of these guys, when they went album by album, here's what we were doing, here's how things were, and everything checks out in both books. Like when I read Halford's after KK's, he kind of corroborated a lot of, like Point of Entry was kind of a drop off. Well, here's why. When we went in there, I don't know, we just didn't have the song. Blah, blah. They both kind of said the same thing.
Oh,
We
okay.
didn't. We didn't come to the table with what we had before, that kind of thing. And Turbo, their take on Turbo, which is so controversial, I think they both said, pretty good record. We really like it, but,
And I
they
like
talked about,
Turbo.
oh yeah, me too. So anyway, they kind of covered each other's bases there. Another thing I wanted to mention is Halford in his book. Are you familiar with his solo stuff from
I'm familiar
2 to
with
5?
I'm familiar with some of Halford. I'm
Uh-huh.
familiar with some of Fight.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a little bit of 2, but Halford is what I'm most familiar with.
Okay, so and Halford, laid this all out, and I was glad to hear it. When he did Fight, okay, I mean that's like thrash, that's like, it's heavy, but it's not Priest,
Yeah,
it's a
different
different kind of
style.
heavy. Okay, so then when he went out and did the 2 record, that's industrial. Okay,
Hmm.
that's a total departure. And not a bad record. I didn't like it at the time, and I played it recently, and I was like, I don't know, that's pretty good. But
Hmm.
I'm sure I was just locked into who I thought he was and who I thought he should
Yeah.
be.
This doesn't sound
Okay,
like Priest.
what's that?
This doesn't sound like Priest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. But anyway, he said in the book when he did the band Halford, he said, I'd had enough. I wanted back in, and I wanted to show them I could do what they're doing every bit as good, and they needed me back in their band. And so
Hmm.
that first record's brutal. That first record, Resurrection, is, I mean, that's hard stuff, man.
Well, that
That
song's a jam, Resurrection.
Oh yeah, and the vocal on it, like right out of the box, man. So, and it worked. That he says, pretty much it worked. They heard what he was doing, and somehow that meeting came about where he decided, yeah, I'll be back in the band.
Well, that meeting you're talking about where they got back together, I have the DVD, the classic album series. Have you ever watched those?
No, I have not.
There's a classic album series where they're like documentaries about the making of quote unquote classic albums, and they did one on British Steel. And
Oh,
in
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, in that they talk about what they say is that when we got together to discuss the box set, and I'm
Okay.
guessing that's when they released like a compilation of things.
Hmm.
That's when they were like, oh well, what if we just get back together? And they're like, yeah, okay, all right.
As if we could have done this at any time,
Yeah,
right?
and they say, oh, it was all terribly British.
Yes. He said that here in this too as well. So yeah, like again, I don't remember all the details because it's been a while for that book as well. But I wonder, because we were gonna talk about the new pre-song Panic Attack,
Right.
but KK has new music out now, and I kind of wonder if he's following Rob's blueprint and trying to prove that, hey, because he was inactive for a while, and now he's got a full-fledged band with Ripper Owens, and they're playing stuff very much in the Priest vein. I would say more in the Painkiller vein than Screaming for Vengeance or whatever. But his videos are heavy, and they're all in the same. They all kind of have the same feel to him. He's
Yeah.
dark, and I'm the leather guy, I'm the,
Totally.
we got that imagery and everything. And I just wonder, I mean, I feel like they're never going to let him back in, especially after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If they were going to reconcile, that was the night.
Right.
And who knows what happened that night? They, the guys in the band say he was kind of standoffish. You know, it doesn't look like that on their performance. It looked like they're having a blast. So I don't know.
Yeah, but I could see all of them putting it aside and being like, well, I'm going to perform well because we are professionals after all.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I hope so. And, you know, Van Halen couldn't do it, but, you know, good thing those guys did it.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm one of those guys that, you know, I wish it was a band of brothers. I wish everybody would reconcile, but I don't feel it's up to us, the fans, to tell them, hey,
Yeah.
you have to go to work with that guy you can't stand, or if you can't get over that thing that happened, you know, I can't tell you have to, you know?
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've listened to the KK's Priest stuff, and it doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
And one thing that, because Ripper's a good singer, and he's always been a good singer, but he's not the lyricist that Rob Halford
Oh,
is.
yeah. Very limited in that department.
So I think that's what KK's because KK can wail, he plays the guitar great, just like he always has.
Yeah.
But if KK's Priest, I think its biggest failing is it's just lyrically, it's just not on the same level as Rob's stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, like I say, I think he's trying to like force the issue, and I don't know that it's going to work, you know.
Right.
And then, plus, you know, he did that stuff for all those years, and then he had all this downtime. I'm sure he wants to get back in the game on any level, and he can play any of the festivals that he wants. You know, he can play in front of the big crowds. So good for him. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, Glenn's in bad shape.
Yeah.
How bad, we don't know. He can still come out at the end of their shows and, you know, play those barchord songs, you know,
Yeah.
the simple ones. I no idea how much writing. They say he's very involved in the writing. Okay, if he is, he is.
I hope
great.
that's true.
Yeah, I do too. But I don't know. I just got a feeling in my gut that Glenn's like, that guy's out. We're done with him. And
yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, I'm a huge Glenn Tipton fan. He's been one of my biggest guitar influences ever since I started playing. So to see him not be able to play and see him, you know, fall prey to this disease, it sucks. It hurts.
oh yeah, yeah,
And we've all lost because of it.
oh, exactly, yeah, and he's, um, you know, over the years, you know, you listen to the solos and they go back and forth one to the other, and you know, you can tell they've got distinct styles.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and you know, Glenn to me is like, um, you know, I would say like Tony Iommi is the guy that can come up with these, you know, a million badass, you know, evil sounding riffs. He can do riffs all day long. uh, Glenn, you know, he comes up with these leads, you know, and they can be sinister sounding, and they can be, you know, high pitched wailing and stuff like that. He's just, I don't know that there's anybody out there really like him. I don't know. Could you compare anybody to him?
No.
Yeah,
Honestly, no. Nobody plays guitar like that guy.
yeah. He comes up with some really memorable stuff.
And there's a lot of guitar players who recognize his talent. I don't think he's recognized by the masses as much but the people who play guitar and they know what it takes to play guitar, they see what and they hear what Glenn's doing and what he's done over the years, and they know that he's one of the greats.
Yeah, that's quite a journey from like that first record where they, you know, they looked like a 60s Woodstock band, and
Yeah.
the sound changed, you know, because I think like Sad Wings of Destiny was, you know, this okay, that's them, you know, here they come. And then Sin After Sin, and like Stained Class, man, I love that record.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite of the 70s records, Stained Class, although, you know, ask me next week and maybe not. But
Yeah, that's a tough call. Honestly, for me, 70s Priest is my favorite Priest.
yeah,
My favorite records are the Sin After Sin, Stained Class, and Hellbent for Leather, or Killing Machine, whatever you want to call it. Those three are just
yeah,
great. They're fun. They're fun to listen to.
you know, it seems like they got these different personalities throughout those, you know, and they come up with songs, and the covers that they pick are kind of insane.
Yeah.
You know, the songs that they pick and then what they do with them is like, you know.
I didn't know Better by You, Better Than Me was a cover until a couple years ago, and I heard the original, and it was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, Green Manalishi to me is, a lot of people don't know Fleetwood Mac was even, the kind of band that did that kind of music. Everybody thinks Fleetwood Mac is, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. But before that, when Peter Green was the main
Totally
guy,
different band.
Fleetwood Mac, yeah, totally different, blues rock, guitar blues rock kind of stuff. But then they take that song, and I mean, to me, that's a metal anthem. That is just a brilliant song.
Oh yeah.
They're just, I don't know, one of my favorite bands, as you can tell.
Oh, same. Oh, well, actually, they are my favorite band. I don't
Oh,
have
is that right?
I don't have a band that I hold in higher esteem, honestly.
Okay, excellent. So, what do you think of the Ripper records?
Which one did I have? Demolition, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Jugulator and Demolition.
Yeah, I had Demolition years ago. And as a whole, I'm not that into them. There are a handful of songs that
Right.
I like.
Yeah, that's how it was with Jugulator. I was glad, I'm telling you, I honestly, I don't know exactly how old you are, but the end of the 90s, early 2000s, tough days, I
Yeah,
mean, tough
I'm
time.
30. I'm 31.
Okay. Yeah, I saw everything that I loved pushed in the background and ridiculed and made fun of, and people that were huge were barely making it, and
Yeah.
people like the Bullet Boys and Firehouse level bands, when they get a platinum album and then the next thing there's nothing for them, and so Halford's Out a Priest, oh my gosh, and
Dark
then
times indeed.
yeah, and so when Jugulator came out, it was like Dark Side of the Moon or something for me at the time, just to have it. But yeah, it doesn't hold up. I mean, and I'm not criticizing it at all. It's the better of the two, I think. It's better than Demolition.
Oh, okay.
Jugulator is, but no. And then okay, what do you think of their path once they got Halford back? Because you got Angel of Retribution.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, honestly, I kind of forgettable for me right now. I would have to really.
Oh, I'm a big fan
You
because
like that one, huh?
oh yeah, when I first got into Priest, which I don't remember what year that was, but that was a fairly new record at the time. And this was before I had kind of delved into Priest, so I didn't know that there had been this lineup change, and I didn't know about their older records. It was I was still finding out who these guys were.
Okay.
And I don't know, that whole record, Judas Rising, the opening track,
Oof.
Hell Rider, I really like Hell Rider. Deal with the Devil. I don't know. I feel like that song is just, or that album is just, it's very forward. It's just, they're like, all right, guys, let's put it in third gear. Rob's back.
Yeah, but then the ballad,
Leviathan?
no,
Or
is it worth
Loch
fighting
Ness.
for?
Oh, yes, worth fighting for.
I mean, I'm calling that a ballad.
It's like a pretty song, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that one as well.
What's that?
I like Worth Fighting For. I think that's a good song.
Oh, okay, yeah. They, that one right there, I kind of skimmed over it for whatever reason. And then was the next one was Redeemer of Souls? Is that what they did next?
No, Nostradamus.
Oh, you're right. You're right. And I just finally got into Nostradamus this year.
It takes a while.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they expected of that. You know what I mean? Because that's hard in that time. That would have been tough for them to do in the 80s at the height of
when
their
they were at the top. Yeah.
So to try and pull that off at that time, that's a tough sell.
That's one of the things I love about Priest, though, is they're always pushing it. They're always experimenting. What we did on the last record is not what we're going to do on the next record. I really admire that about them and taking those sort of risks, because sometimes they blow up in your face and sometimes they're great successes. And I remember when Nostradamus came out, I was highly anticipating it because I had just gotten into Priest a few years prior, and they had a new album coming out. So I was going to get to hear new music from this band that was just blowing my mind. And I remember I was in Kansas. I was visiting family, and I went to Walmart the day the record was going to be released. And I looked around, and there was nothing. They hadn't There was no Nostradamus record. So I went and found one of the employees and I said, "Hey, do you have Nostradamus? It's this Judas Priest album. It's supposed to be released today." And he went in the back and grabbed me a copy. So I certainly maybe I bought the first copy that day at that store. But I remember I went and listened to it and I was like, "What's this? This doesn't sound like Priest."
Yeah.
Huh. And then I gravitated to a few of the songs, the heavier tunes on there. But now especially, I really I enjoyed it a lot more. And I really respect what they did because I really love the idea of a concept album.
Obviously.
And it's difficult to pull off.
Yeah. I have to separate myself from what I expect of it, and I guess for me, because shame on me to not like it at the time, to not really dive into it. I clearly had expectations. And then I think by the time I actually listened to it, I think there had been a bunch of negative press, or reaction to it. And I think that probably colored my perception, at least to some extent. But now, just take it off on its own by itself. It's brilliant musically. And, they do have a couple of the ripping songs that you would want from them. I've heard people say that like the interludes, the instrumentals and stuff in between, they could have got rid of like half of those and made it like a single album. And I don't know. It's not my story. They wrote the story the way they want to write it, and that's it.
Right. They did it for a reason.
Yeah. But I do wonder because, gosh, was it KK that wanted to do the album in its entirety on the next tour? I don't know, man. I don't know how that would have worked.
Well, I remember him talking about they talked about doing like a stage production of it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that would have been awesome. And it wouldn't have hurt the album. I don't know if it would have helped. I don't know if people would have gone. I don't know if it would have been seen, but it wasn't going to hurt because, like KK said, instead of this album getting a bunch of attention, it just got relegated to them playing a couple of the songs on the next tour, and then it was just kind of forgotten about.
Yeah. And I'm afraid it would have been a dismal failure. I really am. And
it might have been, probably.
Yeah. I mean, because like, how, Styx with that Kilroy Was Here album, they came out with all the suits and everything, and did Mr. Roboto and all that. And, that, probably before your time, but.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Styx they're huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of ruined them, and, the album sold and everybody in the band got up there and put on the costumes and played the songs and everything. But then when the reaction went bad, everybody acted like, well, Dennis DeYoung, came up with this idea, and who liked this idea anyway? And, I mean, if it would have been successful, then they'd have sang a different tune. But that's kind of what I was afraid of when I read all that he wanted to do that performance. I mean, I would have gone and I would have liked it. I would have known the story before I went there. But I think you'd have a whole bunch of dudes my age that show up at the arena at 6 o'clock hammered already. And they just want to hear another thing coming. And I just, I don't think it would have worked, but not because it's a bad concept at all.
Yeah, it's an art piece, and so it's not going to be digestible for everybody.
Right.
And I knew that when I made Chuck, I was like, well, this isn't going to be for everybody because it's ultimately for me. And if people enjoy it, well, that's just a benefit. And this was also me trying to talk about concept albums and that sort of thing. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I didn't want to release a rock and roll album and then release another rock and roll album. And then people go, well, I guess he's going to release yet another rock and roll album.
Yeah.
I figured I would do because I had the idea for the concept album. I figured, well, I'll do it second and then people won't know what to expect from me. And then I can just do whatever I want. And that's really what I want to do. I just want to have that musical freedom. And I think that's what Priest really wants.
Okay. For me, the challenge of a concept album is I have to put in the time somewhere and hopefully up front, like with this one, I didn't, but I have to put in the time up front to hear the whole story and know everything. Because if I'm going to sit here at the computer and do something for 20 minutes, say, I always put music on, always, and if like if I put on Van Halen 2, I know I'm going to get, those first 4 songs or whatever. If I'm getting the story, and I don't know the whole story, and it's in the background and I'm not focusing, I don't get what I know I'm supposed to be getting. I'm not following along with the story. So I need to get familiar with the whole story, and then I can pop this in and go, yes, this is the part where, this, that, and the other happened. And another record like that was Savatage had a record called Streets, and it was after Gutter Ballet, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's fantastic, but it took me forever to follow along with the story and know what happens to Downtown Jesus at the end and all this stuff. And I'm just saying, uh, I think that's what you're up against when you put out a concept album, is you're asking people, you're not saying, hey, here's the single, even though there could be one on there, definitely. Right. But you're asking people to ride along, for the whole thing. And some people just, especially the short attention span seems to be a bigger and bigger problem for everybody.
Oh yeah, that was something I was thinking about when I put this out, for sure. That short attention span. But another thing too that you make me think of is kind of like a sci-fi movie. If like if you watch Star Wars and you don't buy the concept of the Force, that's it. You're out. The movie's over. It's kind of like what you're talking about with the concept album. If you can't kind of buy in a little bit and kind of start getting something out of it, that's it. So yeah, if you can't sell people on the story or the idea, it's it. You're done.
Yeah, but I think it's it's ambitious, and it's like totally admirable for anybody to do it. And I, it's one of those things that like throughout history, the big bands, when they try it, you never know, and like going back to Styx, like I think like the Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight, those are concept albums, right? They're talking about the same thing. Pieces of Eight is like, the money, don't let the money dominate your life. It's not everything.
And I haven't listened to all of these albums, so I'm just...
Yeah, no, that's fine. I haven't listened to them in a long time, but Pieces of Eight, it doesn't really get pigeonholed. You've got Blue Collar Man on there.
I know that one.
And Renegade, those are radio singles. So
totally.
I guess there's a trick to it. I guess there's a
way to do it. Well, I'm trying to figure that out because the next album I'm going to do is yet another concept album.
Right on.
Yeah, because there's just there's something about, this is the way I would explain it. If you write a story, you're not going to be content with writing disjointed sentences in a row after that. And that's how I feel about writing songs that maybe don't connect to each other on an album. I could do it, and I'd be happy to put out an album of just songs that don't have anything to do with each other. But there's something about writing a story and having a continuity and fleshing out themes and having consistent ideas throughout that's very appealing to me, especially now that my way of thinking has changed as I've gotten a little older.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm glad you have an outlet for it. I'm glad you get, like you get feedback, I'm sure from people of, what you're coming up with. Cause I mean, that as much as you like it, I mean, it's work too, right? I mean, it's a burden, cause you don't want it to suck. You don't want it to,
Right. Well, and this is the thing too, is you have to really, and I think most creators don't have a problem doing this. You really have to filter yourself. All of the songs that people have heard, there is, twice as many songs that sucked and they didn't get past me because I'm like, well, this is just terrible. It's not even good enough for me. So no one else is going to hear this. So you have to filter yourself. And so that's kind of what you do. You build up your confidence. You say, oh, well, I think this is good. Let's show it. And then like, okay, people think that's good. Okay, write something else. I don't think this is that great. I'm not going to share that. And then, so that's kind of how you build up your confidence. You feed people a little bit of it. Okay, you get some good response. Maybe you get some critiques here. And I wish people were a little bit more critical of Chuck because I think maybe people were being nice because it's a very personal album. It's about losing my father. And I think maybe people put on the gloves when they gave me feedback because they knew that, and that's fair. But what I think I learned from that album is that some people got kind of stuck or maybe speed bumped by the story. They liked the songs and they liked the music, but maybe the story and the character pieces kind of held them up or kind of slowed them down or took them out of it. And so I have a way to rectify that on the new album.
Okay, good. You get a, not really a do-over, but learn from the past. And
yeah, and I still get to do what I want. I'm not going to compromise it in any way, but I'm like, oh well, I can tweak this and they can get maybe more of what they want and I can still get what I want. And that's kind of the agreement you make with the audience. You kind of there's got to be a give and take.
Okay. For whatever it's worth, I really like Plugs Out. And those first two songs that you start with, the Laguna Munta song and the Hardest Guitar to Play.
Yeah.
That's pretty strong. that's
I'm glad.
Man, that is good, And then, what's talk about the comic book connection. Because you got songs that are part of that guy's comic books.
Yeah, so my oldest friend, Cody Fernandez is his name. He started producing his own comic books. They're called Jack Irons, the Steel Cowboy, and they're sci-fi western kind of post-apocalyptic comic books. And I saw that. So when he started putting these out, another musical artist saw it, and he created some music for it. And I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I not doing this? Like, this guy's my friend. I should be creating music for this. So I just kind of wrote kind of a Western feeling song, and I tried to add a little bit of sci-fi into that. I tried to match the motifs, the sci-fi Western with my music. And I just did that for fun and kind of as an exercise. And also I thought, well, this is going to be good promotion for my friend's comic book, and it's also going to be good promotion for me. People who read his comics might hear it. People who listen to my music might be interested in his comic book. And when he put out the second issue, I put out another track. And when he put out the third issue, I put out another track. He just put out the fourth issue, and I haven't put out the fourth track, so I'm behind. But it was really just to kind of get involved with my friend's creativity in some way and sharing that.
Well, those are really good songs, the ones you got out there. And you tap into the guy's story. You tap into the, because they all have the name of them all indicates like what's going on, right?
Yeah. So Jack's Ride. Yeah, that's the first one. And there's this. I think I latched onto images. Not so much the story, because that's tricky to do, especially in an instrumental. But I just latched onto images, and so when there's a picture of Jack on his motorcycle, and it's getting towed by these robotic horses, and so I just was like, okay, well, this is something to evoke that imagery of Jack's Ride,
right on.
And that's where the first one came. That's how the first one came about. And I think the second one is Showdown at Cody's, and that is actually, that is kind of inspired by the story.
Okay.
So there's a part in the comic book where Jack is in this bar called Cody's, named after the creator, and a robot bounty hunter comes into the bar looking for Jack. And so I just kind of wrote this piece. Originally, I was gonna write it about like The Coming Storm, I think was the original title for the song. And it was missing something. And I sent it to Cody, the creator of Jack Irons. And I was like, I feel like this is missing something. And he's like, yeah. And so I added another part to it. And then I kind of latched onto the gunfighter showdown element. And that kind of helped the song kind of come to life. And then the third one, Ambush at Coyote Pass, that was inspired because Jack Irons, my friend Cody, who's doing Jack Irons, he has a friend who is doing a manga, which is called Cactus Coyote. Okay. And that was kind of supposed to be in the same universe. And so that's just where the name Coyote came from. I was like, I'll name it Ambush at Coyote Pass as a kind of an homage to the Cactus Coyote character. And that one I just imagined myself. I was just like, yeah, Jack's riding through this canyon and there's these bounty hunters up on the edges of the canyons going to ambush him. And I just went from there. And that's and on that track at the end, there's kind of a character piece, kind of in the vein of Chuck, where you can hear the bounty hunters talking to one another because they've shot Jack and they think he's dead, and then he gets up and shoots him, and that's the end of the story.
Good stuff. Now,
It's fun.
Those are good tracks. Those are good tracks. Kind of leads me to another point. I think it's on Twitter. I think you said you are interested in scoring a movie soundtrack.
Yeah.
Any luck on that? Is that
how does one
get to do that?
That's a great question. I wish I had the answer for that. You know what it's going to come down to is I'm just going to have to make my own movie.
Okay. All right.
But no, I would really love to because I really love John Carpenter. I really love his movies, and I love his soundtracks for his movies. And movies are really my first love. That's what I don't spend a lot of my off time listening to music. I spend it watching movies. I have a huge collection. I used to work at a video store. That's what I tend to spend my extra money on, is movies. And I grew up watching movies with my dad. That's kind of one of the ways we connected, and we would quote movies to each other. So movies are a huge part of my life. So I've always kind of wanted to be involved in film in some way. And I figured, well, I've gotten kind of a reputation and I've built a sort of following with my music, and I'm not that bad at it. Maybe I could get a foot in the door this way. So I love the idea of trying to, especially after writing Chuck, trying to capture a mood and evoke emotions. And if the images were already there, most of the work would be done for me. All I'd have to do is just get behind the keyboard or the guitar and just follow it.
Man, that is so interesting, because now I'm a big reader, and like I can sit here and tell you, okay, I'm going to read the comic books. I'm going to go ahead and read them. Man, my queue is just stacked with things that I'm going to read. Okay, my son writes about movies. Okay, he makes a little money writing about movies online. And, he kind of specializes in like Humphrey Bogart and 1930s movies and stuff like that. And so he's very immersed in movies, and he like kind of follows directors.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, the Brian De Palma movies, he could tell you, everything that guy's done. And, David Fincher, I think, is probably one of his favorite. He did Seven and The Game and stuff like that. And his movies all, and so that's something like more recently for me. I've spent a lot of time watching movies with him as he's, trying to figure out, am I going to write about this or write about that? And it's really enjoyable. There's an art form that, there's movies like that have Shaq and The Rock in them, okay, whatever.
Right.
There's movies where these guys are just brilliant. These men and women are just absolutely brilliant with their emotions, the writing, everything, and it's just a lot deeper than the casual moviegoer thinks.
That's the thing is I've learned to watch movies differently over the years. And that's why, and it's a shame. It kind of sucks for me because I can't just enjoy every movie now, I sit and I go, wow, well, this sucks. I can't watch this. But when something's good, oh man, does it really make an impact?
Yeah. Kind of along the same lines, God, way back years and years ago, when I was in the military, I went to Universal Studios with a friend of mine, and I saw, they show you the facades and they show you all the fake stuff and the magic and how they do it. And it's never been the same for me. I see DiCaprio in a costume. I don't see a cowboy really so much. I mean, I do. I get immersed in the movie. But, those fake streets that they have at Warner Brothers and Universal Studios, you see them a mile away. After you've been there, and you realize, oh, every other movie uses this street, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was just kind of like a game changer. Like you said, the way you look at them different.
Right.
The other thing that just blows my mind, because obviously I grew up, before the internet and all that stuff.
Lucky you.
Well, I'll tell you, a guy like me watched Jaws in 1975, and then maybe one more time when it came on TV a few years later, and then went the whole rest of your life, maybe you'd see it one more time. Now I watch movies, and the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time through, oh my God, I didn't know they were talking about that.
Yeah,
I didn't
you have
know
that chance.
yeah, they revealed something way up here. If I was paying attention, I would have noticed, but I didn't.
And
Uh,
that's the beauty of a film well made,
yeah,
and
yeah,
a song well made.
yeah.
I remember when I made a video about British Steel on my channel years ago, and I was re-listening to the album, and I noticed something like the day I was making the video, I listened to the whole album, and I heard something or something stood out to me that had never stood out to me before, and so yeah, that can kind of help us. This is kind of a good segue because um something my girlfriend said years ago while we were having a conversation. She said, subtlety is the opportunity for discovery.
Okay.
And I think that's the case for these movies where it's like, if you do something subtle, it gives me the opportunity to then, I have to work to notice it. It's not like, here it is, this is it, here you go. It's more like, do you see this over here in the background? This kind of thing that was happening. I think that's what makes some movies really great and gives them rewatch, and songs too, where there's just these subtle little things that all build up into something big and great. And I feel like a lot of heavy-handed movies where the message is just too clear, and heavy-handed songs really, they just don't resonate with me because I like subtlety. I like burying my ideas in metaphor. I like kind of being poetic. I like making people think and kind of work. I like to make people work to know what I'm thinking is what it is. And I like to be made to work to understand what the creator is thinking.
Yeah, no, that's great. Because it's funny. Van Halen's my favorite band, and for all the, you say that out there today, and a lot of people think of David Lee Roth goofing around and saying stuff that doesn't make sense. And the brilliance of Edward Van Halen to me is, I will never understand everything that he did, and yeah, he's got some pop songs, and he's got some, some stuff that are really just David Lee Roth vehicles to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, that guy, he painted a picture with his guitar, and, innovated. A big criticism of him is that a whole bunch of copycats and sound-alikes that were horrible came along. Not his fault.
Right. That's what happens when somebody great shows up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I do tend to, I like Rush, and I like Sabotage and stuff like that. That's, the songs are really saying a lot. But I can listen to Beautiful Girls, on Van Halen too.
Right. Yeah. And I would never say that I don't enjoy that sort of thing either. And I enjoy a good popcorn movie too. Not everything has to be a message. Not everything has to have depth. Yeah. So, when somebody is putting forth a message, I like a little bit of subtlety. I like a little,
fair enough.
A little bit of be clever with it. Don't just say. That's why a lot of kind of like the punk. It's kind of the punk rock thought, where the message is more important than the music. That's what I've heard punk rock described as before.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of and not all punk is the same, and not all bands are like this. I don't, I know that, but there are those bands which I think of when I hear that said. I'm like, yeah, they're just kind of screaming this message, and they're not really doing much melodically, or they're not doing that. They're not really doing interesting musically, and that doesn't interest me. I prefer a melodic song with some subtle meaning to it, and it just kind of pulls you in, makes you think. There's opportunity there for you to really dig in and think.
Yeah, and I'm just listening to you and talking to you tonight, I know when you're creating something, you don't want it to be something that just anybody could have just got up there and did that.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why, you've got something to offer. You want to offer up something that's uniquely you. Or
yeah, and that's a good, because Eddie Van Halen, I know I cannot play like Eddie Van Halen. Who can I play like? Me. Who can't play like me? anybody else. I'm unique unto myself. And as soon as I kind of latched on to that idea, it really helped me a lot, because I knew I wasn't going to be the best guitar player. I knew, there's 10-year-olds that can outplay me, and that's fine. I have my own feel. I have my own style, and I'm comfortable there. I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I'm just trying to create my creation.
Yeah, that's good. And it sounds like you don't need any encouragement, but I implore you to keep doing it. And, I know you got like a video up there where, you're playing somewhere and there's, essentially nobody out
Yeah.
there. And like you said earlier, you're letting it fly just like anything, man, what you have is a gift, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I feel very fortunate to have it. Because I know that it affords me the opportunity to express emotion and convey thoughts and ideas that that I otherwise may not be able to convey and express. So I know that it's a gift, and I feel very fortunate, because it's very fulfilling. I think we all try to find fulfillment in this life, and some people find it through their job, maybe, or through their family. And I'm fortunate that this is where I find my fulfillment. So I'm not out there pursuing a job that I know is going to fill this hole or whatever. And I'm not working 80 hours a week just because I feel for those people who do that because they're lacking in something, or they feel that that's maybe the way to fulfill themselves. And I'm glad that I have art to do that.
Oh yeah. Excellent. I really appreciate it. And I'll tell you what, we've been going an hour, and I thought this might be 20 to 30 minutes, man.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about the new Judas Priest song.
I know. So, okay, briefly, what do you think?
Well, I thought it was overall. What did I wrote? I wrote overall good. Priest still rocks.
Okay. So, what do you think of Halford's vocals? Okay, because that is otherworldly, And I wonder. Listen, okay, you would know far better than me. What you can do in the studio, I don't know. I have had the feeling for years when I hear Ozzy Osbourne on these last couple of albums. I mean, I don't think that's him. I mean, I know it's him, but like, I don't even understand what you can do with auto-tune and stuff like that. But
Right.
I just got a feeling like, like Don Dokken, his live performances are just unbelievably bad now. And yet Dokken just came out with a new album. How did he do that?
Well, yeah, and I know a lot of people would probably think auto-tune, and I haven't heard the new Dokken, so I wouldn't know. But one thing that the studio affords you is time.
Okay.
And retakes.
Okay.
And that's something a live performance doesn't afford you. When you're in the studio, you can just you're playing your guitar riff for the recording, and you mess it up, great, you stop, start again till you get it right. Yeah. And you do the same. And with your vocals, like, oh, we're going to work on Rob's vocals today. He goes in, he sings, maybe it's not, maybe this part's good, maybe this part's bad. Okay, well, come in next week, we'll do it again. So I think that's really it. You have the time to hammer things out and take a breath, rest your voice, get back in there when you're feeling a little bit better. Whereas when you're on tour, not that I've been on these big tours, but I just would know, because just playing 2 shows in a row, you feel it in your voice. So if you're out there for a 8-month-long tour or however long, your voice is going to be thrashed, and you're not going to be able to sing the same every night. I mean, there are ways you could do it, and you could learn maybe to treat your voice a little bit better, and sing properly, I guess. But I think that's the big difference, is just time. You just can take your time and make sure everything sounds right. And that's what you want to do, because an album is, you're just trying to put your best foot forward, trying to make the best music you can. And when you go play live, you do the same thing, but there's just no opportunity for retakes, and every mistake is going to be noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, Halford's highs on Panic Attack are just so brilliant. It's almost like it's too good to me, And
I understand.
But I mean, I love it. I love the song. And then they're talking about the world being just full of conflict and.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things. I liked it, but I did think it was heavy-handed.
Yeah.
In its messaging.
Priest hasn't been a band that I've gone to for that kind of thing.
Same.
Black Sabbath always speaks out against the evils of the world, the war
Right.
pigs and stuff like that. And that's part and parcel of who they are. Priest, it doesn't all have to be living after midnight, but just a little bit of an odd message from them. But what do I know?
Yeah. And I don't mind a message in a song, and I think it makes sense. And but like I said, yeah, my only issue with the messaging was just I felt it was heavy-handed. And also I this is some of my notes here because I just listened to it before we started talking. The terminology that Rob uses, just the lyric like World Wide Web and cybertronic schemes and all this sort of thing. I feel like it kind of dates Rob. I feel like it ages him because just the things he's saying, just those phrases, World Wide Web, it just
Okay.
sounds like he's out of touch.
Okay. All right. That's a good point. It kind of reminds me, like everything goes back to Van Halen for me on that Different Kind of Truth. That 2012 album with David Lee Roth, Different Kind of Truth.
I know of it, but I haven't heard it.
Well, but probably half the songs were old songs, like even going back to the 70s, stuff that they had written a long, long time ago. And one of them, which was like before they got signed and was going to be on the first record, and it ended up not being on it. It's called Out of Space on Different Kind of Truth. I think it had a different name back in the old days. And there's bootlegs out there. You can hear this song, but Roth updated the lyrics. And I don't know what the lyrics were in the old days. I can't remember, but on the Different Kind of Truth version, he mentions his Facebook page and stuff like that. And knowing that it was an old song, it kind of came across kind of like what you're saying, like an old guy kind of trying to sound young. Like I'm cool with these young people. I mean, that's what I thought when you were saying that about Halford's the World Wide Web. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
but like let me throw out some of my more positive thoughts on this thing. I thought the intro was awesome.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of YYZ or YYZ. That bano nano nano bano nano nano bano nano nano bano nano nano. So and then I really like the 80s synth sound that they had going for the intro. And those kind of 80s sounding drums with a boom, 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 boom. And they've got a lot of reverb on them, so they sound really big. I like that. And I hope the whole album, I would be really excited if the whole album had that kind of vibe. Because it sounds like they're doing a retro 80s kind of vibe with that intro. So if the whole album had that, I wouldn't mind. I would be into that.
Okay. Same here. I would highly recommend you listen to Firepower. I think you should give that thing a shot. It's got a little bit of everything from that era, in my opinion. This song, I do like it, and it's great to hear the Priest. I mean, something new from the Priest, I'm in. Sign me up. I don't care what it is. I have a feeling this isn't going to be one of the best songs off the record. And it's all those things you said, those are all perfectly fair points. I agree with every one of them. I got a feeling that they're going to come out with more, just like this is going to be like the straight ahead song. That's just, we'll find out. If I'm wrong, I'll be right back on here and say I'm wrong. But
but that's a fair point. Yeah, I think they're just putting out something that they know is going to work. They're like, yeah, this sounds like classic Priest. We've got the riff. We've got Rob screaming. We've got the solos. They traded off solos and then they did the dual solo. Yep. Yes, that's the way to do it.
So it's, hey, everybody, this is no more Nostradamus. Don't worry. Here, take this. And
I know people loved Firepower, so they have, and I think that was one of their better reviewed albums in a long time. So they have to meet the expectations of that album.
Yeah, I don't know what. I don't remember the exact timeline of Richie joining the band and Redeemer of Souls. I don't know where they were at, with him and what.
That's his first album,
right? Were they working on stuff they had before? Because I'm telling you, Richie is a huge contributor. They give all credit to Glenn, and I'm sure Glenn's involved and so on and so forth. But Richie's a force, okay? And Firepower sounded like, my gosh, they harnessed what they had and they're doing it again. It did not sound, in my opinion, it was not, hey, that's pretty good for them. That's pretty good at this stage of the game. It wasn't any of that at all. This is a smoking record. And I don't say that for, Tesla comes out with a new record, and as much as I love Tesla, that one right there, I thought stood on its own. And I think you'll really like it. I really do.
Oh, well, I heard the title track back when it came out, and it rocked. I was like, sure. But I don't think I think probably I was just not looking for that sound at the time. And I think I still felt the way I did about Redeemer of Souls, where I was like, well, I just want them to do something a little different. I want to hear something a little bit outside of their normal realm. And I think that this Panic Attack track does that for me, because it sounds a little bit like Turbo. It sounds a little bit like classic Priest that's got that heavy. So it's kind of new and different in its own way, while still true to Priest. Yeah. But I will listen to Firepower again.
Give it a go, and we'll kick it around down the road if you feel like it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, man, I'm going to get rolling. I really appreciate you stopping by. This is a great talk. This is precisely what I was hoping would happen. We got off the track, but it was worthwhile stuff. Right?
Definitely, yeah. And I enjoyed this as well, and I'm glad we could do it. I look forward to doing some more of this with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm going to link your Bandcamp and stuff in the description.
Great.
But just thanks a lot. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll be in touch. We'll talk about doing something else like this down the road.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right. I'll see ya.
See ya.